जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीर वनचारी यमुना तीर वनचारी जय राम जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा श्याम सुंदर राधा जय कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद जय श्रील प्रभुपाद हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय हरे कृष्णा वेलकम एवरीवन thank you for joining anybody remembers what was the main topic of the previous chapter we will be starting chapter 15 today so what was the connection between the chapter number 14 and 15
It is basically the disappearance of Godhead Krishna. We studied in the chapter 14.
So how does it connect?
I think that Krishna's disappearance took place. Maybe the Pandavas now realize that when their time has come. So,
okay. Yeah, but what is the connection in terms of meaning? What was spoken and who spoke? There were certain questions that were asked, right? You remember who asked those questions and what were the questions? Yudhishthir asked quite a few questions, right, to Arjun.
yeah. So when Arjun came back from Dwaraka, so before that only Yudhishthir started observing some sort of a omens which was not comfortable. So he was suspecting something. Then Arjuna returned from Dwaraka and he started asking about the well-being of all the people in Dwaraka. And also he noticed that one, like he was saying that Arjuna was not so like his from his body perspective and the visibility perspectives, he was not looking good. So he was asking the reasons for that one. Then they understood that one.
Yeah. So quite a few questions Yudhishthir asks him. Let's just look at quickly few of them.
Yeah.
So that we will. So he asked, did you insult anybody? Did you have a contact with any other woman? Or meaning, did you give a promise to somebody which you did not fulfill? or anything that you did as a harm to the Brahmanas or something like that, various things. And why why all these questions are important? Because any activity uh, which is part of what Yudhishthir asked, if one performs this one, he is sure to get some pap karma out of it, and the result of that pap karma will be some kind of degradation of either the mind or the body or something else at least. So Arjun had come with such a situation, such a state of mind and physical state as well, that uh, he seemed to be completely devastated. And that state is very much possible to achieve if one performs pap karma on a regular basis. And we will see that in today's verses also, that some physical characteristics of Arjun are depicted by Suta Goswami, and that way we can relate how pap karma can impact our bodily luster or any peace or anything related to our body. So at the end of the whole chapter, Yudhishthir has finished all his questions. And because uh, he also understands, based on what Narad Muni had prophesied in the 13th chapter, Narad Muni, after, if you recollect, uh, Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, and Kunti Mata, they all three leave the palace. And Yudhishthir is looking out for them. He doesn't find, and he's thinking that how will these old people they manage themselves? I am protecting them. Without my protection, how will they survive in this difficult jungle? So that is when Narad Muni comes and he corrects him, saying that you are not the protector of anybody. The Supreme Lord is the protector. He says that everyone is actually drowning in the ocean of material life, and a serpent, big big serpent named time, is actually swallowing everybody. Despite being swallowed by the time serpent, one thinks that I am the protector of my family and my well-wishers and all that. So he's saying that you imagine a situation wherein you are in the deep sea. You may be an expert swimmer, but you are in the deep sea. So the probability that you will drown is still existing. So being expert swimmer, it can be related with having huge amount of material wealth and strength and power and everything. But despite that, out of sheer endurance, even if the best swimmer in the whole world is brought up, he cannot swim across the sea because he will not have that much stamina to swim miles and miles and miles. So just out of sheer endurance, he will drown at some point or the other. And he's saying that you are in the deep sea and you think you are protecting somebody. So that time is like such a big serpent, and you are in the ocean of material life, but still you are thinking you are protecting Dhritarashtra and Gandhari and Kunti, whereas you are not able to understand that the Supreme Lord is protecting everybody. So, and that time Narad Muni also mentions what is going to happen. He told him that Krishna will depart shortly, and after that you Pandavas should also retire from this life. That is what he had said. After speaking all of the questions, I think, if I'm not wrong, almost 20 odd verses he spoke. Yeah, starting from verse number 25 until 43, he spoke about most of the material stuff. Did you do this? Did you do that? And all that. Finally, he comes to the main question, that are you feeling empty because you have lost your intimate friend, Lord Krishna? Otherwise, he's saying, I can think of no other reason for you becoming so dejected. And now that opens the door for chapter number 15. So before we go to chapter 15, I would just like to speak about something in the Ramayana. So Ram was given some meaning order Vanvas by Kaikeyi. I mean, there is a kind of a people think that Dashrath ordered Vanvas for him, but actually Dashrath was even unable to speak at that time because of such situation. He couldn't even dream about ordering Vanvas to Ram. And just the previous night, Dhritarashtra had a bitter quarrel with Kaikeyi when Kaikeyi demanded that Ram be given Vanvas. Dhritarashtra had had a bitter quarrel with her, and he even fainted in his palace, and he lost his consciousness also. The next morning, when he regained his consciousness, when Kaikeyi told him that you should tell this to him, he was unable to speak. And on behalf of him, then Kaikeyi told Ram that you need to go for Vanvas, and this throne should be given to Bharat. After Ram departs, Sita Mata, Lakshman, all three depart, and then Vasishtha Rishi, he gives a message to one of his messengers and asks Bharat to come over to Ayodhya because he had been to the Kaikeya Desh. Kaikeya Desh is the maternal place of Kaikeyi, Queen Kaikeyi. So he was staying over there and he comes here. So the messenger asks Vasishtha, what do I tell him? So he said, do not tell him anything about what has happened here. You only tell him that you are called here and you need to come immediately. That is the message he gives, and Bharat comes. Now, Bharat can see a complete change in environment about whatever meaning Ayodhya was before he left and what Ayodhya is after he comes back. And he is very much surprised. How come so sadness, so gloom? Everybody is sad. Nobody is outside their house. Cats and dogs are barking, and this nobody has put up rangoli also outside their houses. Nothing like that. No diya is being lit. Nothing is there. He comes into the palace. He sees everybody is sad. He is unable to understand what has happened. And he meets Vasishtha Rishi first, I think, and then he comes and meets Kaikeyi. And then Kaikeyi congratulates him on becoming the king and all that. And he is surprised. How come? He is saying. He is saying it is impossible. With with Ram being around, I cannot even dream of becoming the king. Only Ram deserves becoming the king. And then he leaves her palace by giving some speaking some bad words to her, and he leaves her palace and comes to Kaushalya Mata's palace. And there Kaushalya Mata, after seeing him, she starts crying and she starts hugs him a lot. And after a while, when she's back to her normal state, then she starts cursing him. See, she says, are you satisfied with whatever you have achieved? What you and your mother have achieved? Okay. And then he also he realizes that Kaushalya Mata is also thinking that Bharat is responsible for this. Now, to prove that Bharat is innocent, Bharat speaks 50 different sins that are mentioned in Shastra, any of which, if committed, any of which can bring upon complete misfortune on that person. And he speaks about 50 different sins. And finally, he says that there is no other sin remaining which can cause such a destruction on myself. He is saying, if I am responsible for Ram's Vanvas, then I should get the misfortune if all the 50 sins were committed, as if all the 50 sins are committed. So you imagine the depth of it. One sin is sufficient to bring complete misfortune to person. Bharat is saying, I should get all the misfortune if I have committed of equivalent to all the 50 sins if I am responsible for Ram's Vanvas. So when he speaks about these 50 different sins, it's a big list. I'll not speak about it. I remember just a few of them. And similar speech is now being given by Yudhishthir also. That have you done this? Have you done that? Did you cause this? Did you cause that? And which also translates to many of the sins which can cause impact to some of the other aspect of one's life. And we will see some of them when how, despite they not happening, how it caused impact to Arjun's bodily characteristics, that we will see today. Hare Krishna. Before we go to the next chapter, does anyone have any question, any doubt, anything, or shall we start with the new chapter? Anybody has any question?
No.
No? Okay, fine. So let's start.
No problem.
Verse number 1, chapter 15, Canto 1. Suta uvacha evam Krishna sakha Krishno bhratrarajnya vikalpitah nana shankaspadam rupam Krishna vishlesha karshitah. Translation.
Sut Goswami said, Arjuna, the celebrated friend of the Lord Krishna, was grief-stricken because of his strong feeling of separation from Krishna, over and above all Maharaj Yudhishthir's speculative inquiries. Being too much aggrieved, Arjun practically became choked up, and therefore it was not possible for him to reply properly to the various speculative inquiries of Maharaj Yudhishthir.
So this is the first symptom that has been talked about. Now, does anyone remember first chapter when Arjun starts speaking from verse number 28, that he does not want to fight the war? Does anyone remember? There were some symptoms that were displayed by him there as well, right? He's saying, my Gandhi is slipping, my skin is burning, my mouth has dried up, my senses have dried up. So many bodily symptoms he talks about. Now, these symptoms are displayed, are experienced upon certain mental condition. Okay. One of these mental conditions was displayed by Arjun during, before Bhagavad Gita, Krishna started speaking. And there were totally 7 symptoms that were displayed. Some were displayed in the first chapter, 6 of them, and the 7th symptom was displayed by Arjun in the 4th verse of the 2nd chapter. So now he is saying Sutta Goswami is saying he was grief-stricken, that that sadness was there, and that sadness is not a kind of an anticipated sadness. It has come as a shock to him. And this became the cause of his bodily symptoms. So his voice getting choked up, unable to speak, skin getting dried up, senses become motionless, senses become inactive, tears coming from the eyes constantly flowing. All this happens because of this kind of mental condition. One thing we should note is it's not always the material sadness that causes such things. Okay, there is a spiritual sadness and there is a spiritual happiness also, which can also cause these symptoms. Roma harshascha jayate was the statement that Arjun made, which says that the hair on our skin stands on its end. Yeah, it stands when we experience static electricity, you can see, right, the hair standing properly. So this can also happen when we see something unnatural or something unexpected, but it can also happen when you are experiencing spiritual happiness. And one of the examples is when Dhruva Maharaj saw Kshirodakshai Vishnu, he realized one thing at that very moment, that he was actually hankering, and he did all his tapasya for something like a piece of glass. And these are his own words actually. And then he said that actually whole diamond is in front of me, whereas I'm actually hankering for a piece of glass. With this thought, with this mental state, he was absolutely unable to speak anything. His voice was choked up completely. At that time, Shirodaksha Vishnu takes his conch shell and touches his forehead with that. And with that, all the material impurities are removed and he regains his composure, and then he is able to speak to the Lord. So, choking up can happen in both ways. If you have material sadness, if you have spiritual sadness, or if you have spiritual happiness also. Hare Krishna. Okay, let's move on to the next verse. Shoke na shushyad vadana hritsarojo hata prabha vibhum tame vanusmaran na shaknot pratibhashitum. Translation.
Due to grief, Arjuna's mouth and lotus-like heart had dried up. Therefore, his body lost all luster. Now, remembering the Supreme Lord, he could hardly utter a word in reply. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
So again, we see here another body symptom is mentioned here, mouth drying up. So mouth drying up, we can understand. Yeah, but what does heart drying up mean? So basically, the heart becomes motionless, sentimentless, absolutely unable to perform the basic uh, action of mercy, the daya aspect, or even the symptom of having affection for somebody, which is actually one of the functions of the heart. These are also meaning when they say the heart has dried up, then it basically the heart becomes emotionless completely. There is no affection for anybody, and this happens in this particular case because of the shock that Arjuna is in. Then you can imagine that despite coming from Dwarka till Hastinapur, he could not get back his composure. He is still in that state of shock, that he is unable to speak any word. And especially when Yudhishthir Maharaj inquired and inquired and inquired, those speculative inquiries were actually troubling him more and more. So finally, when Yudhishthir Maharaj talked about Krishna's departure, and that is when he could actually feel even a bigger separation, and that impacted him even further. Now, one point here is about losing the bodily luster. So, this is that spiritual sadness which has caused him the loss of bodily luster. But when it comes to people like you and me, we already have lost our luster. That is because of the various papa karmas that we have been doing, either in this life or in the previous life. And to regain that bodily luster, one has to get back into 2, 3 things. One is Krishna Bhakti, and start living in the mode of goodness. When one starts staying, meaning performing his actions in the mode of goodness, Sattva Gun minimum, this bodily luster is regained. When one performs Krishna Bhakti consistently and reaches a very high level stage, that time also one gets back his bodily luster. So this loss of luster, because in the previous times people were less sinful. That's why majority of the people had a good bodily luster, and they were they could be seen as more beautiful than us. Now you see, today we have to apply so many makeup, so many cosmetics to be able to be called beautiful. So whereas these kind of makeups were cosmetics were not there previously, still the description of Draupadi Mata or even Urvashi sorry, not Urvashi, Uttara, has been given in the Shastra. Even Satyabhama and Rukmini Mata, their descriptions, if we see, we will clearly understand that that was a completely natural beauty without any makeup. Whereas now, even with makeup also, one cannot have that same level of beauty. So text 3 we will look at. Krichrena samstabhya shuchah panina mrujya netrayoho parokshena samunnad samunnadha pranayautkanthya katarah. Translation. These don't seem to have too many purports. Who's reading?
Hare Krishna. Translation. With great difficulty, he checked the tears of grief that smeared his eyes. He was very distressed because Lord Krishna was out of his sight, and he increasingly felt affection for him. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
So again, that same state is further being described. And the more and more he is thinking about it, the more affection he is feeling for him. And obviously, one of the symptoms which we saw, is the tears start coming out of the eyes. And this is again that new different bodily symptom that is being described now. Now let's see. When Arjun starts speaking in verse number 5, will speak. He'll speak more about his condition. Sakhyam maitrim sauhridam cha सारथ्यादिषु संस्मरन् नृपम् अग्रजम् इत्याह बाष्पगद्गदया गिरा.
Remembering Lord Krishna and his well-wishes, benefactions, intimate familial relations, and his chariot driving, Arjuna, overwhelmed and breathing very heavily, began to speak. The Supreme Living Being is perfect in all relations with his pure devotees. Shri Arjuna is one of the typical pure devotee of the Lord, reciprocating in the fraternal relationship, and the Lord's dealing with Arjuna are displays of friendship of the highest perfect order. He was not only a well-wisher of Arjuna, but actually a benefactor, and to make it still more perfect, the Lord tied him into a family relationship by arranging Subhadra's marriage with him. And above all, the Lord agreed to become a chariot driver of Arjuna in order to protect his friend from warfare race. And the Lord became actually happy when he established the Pandavas to rule over the world. Arjun remembered all these one after another, and thus he became overwhelmed with such thoughts.
Although here only few of them are mentioned, the Lord has been helping them continuously since the very beginning. Yeah? Meaning, one is his invisible hand, which is there as a help for everybody. But even if you look at just the visible aspects of his help, starting from the time when they had to go to the Vanvas, the 12-year, no, sorry, no, not Vanvas. That is when they were asked the house of lakhs they were asked to stay in, which was burnt, and then they stayed for some time in a kind of an anonymous life. And in that case also the Lord came personally and helped them in many different occasions. One of the helps that was given by the Lord again was during Durvas Muni, when he had come here. I think Jai Govind Prabhu also spoke about it, so I'll not speak about it again. But these kind of help was given by the Lord. Of course, the Lord knows the past, present, and future, and these people were not ordinary people. They are like, they are Nitya Siddha, meaning they are eternally devotees of the Lord. So when, of course, they have been such a pure devotee throughout their life, obviously the Lord will protect them in every scenario, and which he did in every scenario. So when it came to asking Arjun to go and, take some, what do you say, boons from Indra, that suggestion was also given by the Lord, so that he can go there, he will get the Pashupatastra, then also Urvashi will curse him, then he will become a eunuch, and because of which he will be able to stay in an anonymous life in King Virat's kingdom, which will help him maintain his anonymity. Uh, so all of these are so nicely constructed by the Lord in such a manner that in some way or the other, it finally comes back to you as a benefaction, which is what he is talking about here, right? A benefactor is the one who gives benefit to others. Benefaction is what we receive from the benefactor. So in any manner, some way or the other, the Lord gives benefit to others, I mean, especially his devotee. And although here it is talked about Subhadra's marriage being arranged with him, so family relationship and all that there, family relationship was already there. By Arjuna and Krishna were already related with each other with family ties even before Subhadra got married. But this becomes even a bigger and more firmer bonding. And it wasn't as if, had this family relationship, meaning Subhadra's marriage, had it not happened with Arjun, that Arjun wouldn't have become so bonded to Krishna. The bonding of Arjun and Krishna was there since childhood. Meaning Arjun used to desperately wait for Krishna to come over so that, they could be with each other. So all these dealings, I'll just take you back a little bit in terms of Garga Samhita. So in Garga Samhita, if you see that when Krishna was requested by Narad Muni to come down, to descend to the earth and kill all these, miscreant kings and all such people. So he said, yes, I will come. And he assigned a role to everybody to play that role in the whole of Mahabharata. So Mahabharata, does anyone know? I must have spoken about this before, but does anyone know why was Mahabharata? Why did Mahabharata happen? What do you think is the reason behind Mahabharata to happen? Hare Krishna.
Basically for all of us to understand,
Yeah.
to actually get.
What to
Because
understand?
there were basically the thing was, the society was degrading and it was actually going to various things were because of which they wanted it to be changed, and that is how I think Mahabharata and the advent of Krishna happens, right?
Okay.
For Krishna to come in.
Okay. So one of the key reasons is that Kali Yuga was going to start. Now, the characteristics of people in Kali Yuga are such that they will have a short memory, low intelligence, very always quarrelsome, fighting for small bits of pieces. They will not have proper good intelligence. They will not have any inclination towards spiritual life and all that. Now, with such quality of people, to expect them to walk on the spiritual life is difficult. And to expect them to understand the Shastra and then further walk on the spiritual life is even more difficult. So how to teach such people? It is not by way of philosophy, but by way of story. So we should understand that this story form of Mahabharata is being taught to us only because we are incapable of understanding the philosophy if it is not put up in the form of a story. So, we had Hitopadesh, right? Aesop's fables and all that. Right? Every those stories that we learned in our childhood had a moral at the end. Now, this moral was actually the that lesson that we are supposed to take from the story. So now if somebody, let's say our parents or our teachers, had told us that single line moral to us, and then there was a probability that we may not have understood that moral properly, or we may not have given importance to that moral properly. So because of which that moral is now being communicated to us in the form of a story, so that we understand what was the background, who did what happened, what was the positive, what was the negative, what was the final conclusion, and then we will be able to understand what to do and what not to do. So now, because the intelligence level is low, that's why single line moral is not understandable by us. That's why stories are being used. So if you apply the same thing here, the Vedas, if you see Rig Ved, Yajurved, Samved, Atharvaved, all have millions of verses are there in them. Practically speaking, do you think we will have that much even life to read all the verses, let alone understanding them and let alone practically applying in our life? Impossible. So that's why in a condensed form, Bhagavad Gita is spoken. And the complete Shastra, the conclusion of that, in a condensed form, in a story form, Mahabharata is spoken. Now that Mahabharata is where is going to happen, and because of which the roles were being assigned by Krishna to various people, who should take birth in the Yadav family, who should take birth in the Vrishni family, which demigod, and what he will do, and then who will become Kunti, who will become Gandhari, who will become Dhritarashtra, who will become Duryodhan. Everything was decided at that time, only for people like us. So what we have to understand is that Krishna had decided all of this to stage as a drama, so that he gives us as a lesson to all the people in Kali Yuga, how to behave, how not to behave. So when Vyasdev compiled Mahabharata, one of the points that he mentioned about Mahabharata is whatever is there in other scriptures is there in Mahabharata also. But what you see in Mahabharata may not necessarily be there in other scriptures. So what does it mean? That if you want to read just one scripture, Mahabharata should be the one. So you will get the gist of anything and everything of every other scripture in Mahabharata itself. Now for such a then when you understand Mahabharata, you will understand the relationships between Arjun, Krishna, Duryodhana and everybody, and how we should learn from them, what we should do, what we should not do. So one of the objectives was to ensure that a very strong and a pious ruler like Yudhishthir is installed on the throne of Hastinapur, so that he can administer it in a very righteous manner, which is what he did to establish the Pandavas to rule over the world, which is what Arjun remembers, and then he became overwhelmed with all of those thoughts. Hare Krishna. Any question? Shall we move on to verse number 5? No? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Arjuna uvacha vanchitom aham maharaja harina bandhurupina yena me aparutam tejo deva vismapanam mahat.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Translation. Arjuna said, O king, the supreme personality of Godhead, Hari, who treated me exactly like an intimate friend, has left me alone. Thus, my astounding power, which astonished even the demigods, is no longer with me. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.41, the Lord says, anyone specifically powerful and opulent in wealth, strength, beauty, knowledge, and all that is materially desirable is to be considered but a product of an insignificant portion of the complete whole of my energy. No one therefore can be independently powerful in any measure without being endowed by the Lord. When the Lord descends to the earth along with his eternal ever liberated associates, he not only displays the divine energy possessed by himself, but also empowers his associate devotees with the required energy to execute his mission of incarnation. It is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita 4.5 that the Lord and his eternal associates descend to the earth many times, but the Lord remembers all the different roles of incarnations, whereas the associates by his supreme will forget them. Similarly, the Lord takes away with him all his associates when he disappears from the earth. The power and energy which were bestowed upon Arjuna were required for fulfillment of the mission of the Lord. But when his mission was fulfilled, the emergency powers were withdrawn from Arjuna because the astounding powers of Arjuna, which were astonishing even to the denizens of heaven, were no longer required, and they were not meant for going back home, back to Godhead. If endowment of powers and withdrawal of powers by the Lord are possible, even for a great devotee like Arjuna, or even the demigods in heaven, then what to speak of the ordinary living beings? Sorry. Ordinary living beings who are but fixed compared to such great souls. The lesson is, therefore, that no one should be puffed up for his powers borrowed from the Lord. The sane man should rather feel obliged to the Lord for such benefactions and must utilize such power for the service of the Lord. Such power can be withdrawn at any time by the Lord. So the best use of such power and opulence is to engage them in the service of the Lord. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. What a purport. This is amazing. Just amazing. This is the beauty of Srila Prabhupada. Meaning, that is why, one should be in the parampara to be able to, have such a knowledge. You can imagine anything and everything that one would want to know about the Lord, his actions, his relationships, the power, and going back, amazingly mentioned. Let's look at this. So where does the power come from? So this is that shloka, yadyad vibhuti mat sattvam Srimad urjitam eva va tattadeva avagachatvam mama tejo amsha sambhavam. So yadyad vibhuti mat sattvam, whatever the power, opulences and everything is there, Srimad urjitam eva va, it actually comes only from me. Okay. They are anything that is opulent, beautiful, glorious creations, whatever it is, they are just a spark of my splendor. Just a spark, not even the complete splendor. So now, when we say that, and we saw that in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also, right? When Krishna says, I am the intelligence of the intelligent, I am the seed-giving father of everything existing, I am the strength of the strong, this and that and all that, right? So this actually means that whatever intelligence, whatever we have, is actually a donation by the Lord. And what happens practically? We become puffed up. We think, I am intelligent. I am such a great person. I am Bill Gates. I am Jeff Bezos. I am the owner of Microsoft. It is because of me that because of me and my knowledge that I have earned so much money. We forget, or we cannot see the invisible hand of Krishna behind all of this. Krishna wanted, because of certain good karma that you have done previously, Krishna wanted you to get that much money as a result of your karma. And for getting that money, okay, you deserved a certain level of knowledge and intelligence. That's why he gave you that knowledge and intelligence temporarily for this particular life. And that knowledge was again material. It did not help you go back to the spiritual world. So in such a scenario, when we understand that this knowledge is not mine, it has been borrowed from the Lord, one becoming puffed up is one aspect. But one forgetting completely that this knowledge has come from the Lord, that is an even bigger mistake. See, I know that so and so person has given me 1 million dirhams or 100 million dirhams. Fine, that I know. But still I'm becoming puffed up about that 100 million is still okay. Why? Because at least I acknowledge that this is not my money, it is that other person's money. But to forget that that person has given me the money, is that even a bigger crime? So people cannot even understand that this knowledge or any kind of opulence, any kind of power, any kind of energy or strength or intelligence or whatever it is actually coming from the Lord to us. And then once we understand this one, we should understand that we cannot be absolutely in any manner, we cannot be independent outside the power of the Lord. Now what further Prabhupada writes here is, when the Lord descends to the earth, okay, he wants certain activities to be done. So he has all the power, anything and everything that is necessary, he has that. But he wants his devotees or his associates to perform a role in the complete setup, in the complete drama, in the complete incident, for which it is necessary that certain power be available to that person in order to be able to perform that duty. So now, let's take an example of, Arjun. Now, let's take an example of Arjun. Now, because Krishna decided, I will not take up any weapon. This is your fight. You have to fight. I can only give instructions, but you have to perform duty. So when such an action is expected by Arjun, imagine a person like you and me, or with the power like you and me, with hardly any knowledge of archery and any about weapon and anything. If we were to stand in front of Bhishma, will we be able to succeed? Of course, with the Lord's wish, we can, but practically speaking, we will not be able to. So the person who can stand in front of Bhishma and fight also have to be equally powerful, which means the Lord has to give him temporary power. And Bhishma also got that power because Duryodhan was jumping with confidence only because the Bhishma and Drona and people like Karna were on his side. Imagine if archers like Drona, Bhishma and Karna were not there in the camp of Duryodhan. Duryodhan couldn't have, fought with Arjun. The whole of Kaurava army couldn't have fought with Arjun even for a single day. So only that, Duryodhan becomes more and more obstinate, stubborn, and, wanting to fight or have a war with the Pandavas, only because he could feel confident about the support and strength of Bhishma, Drona, and Karna. So wherever necessary, Lord is giving those powers to generate a force and to counter that force also. So, and the Lord empowers his associate devotees with the required energy to execute his mission of incarnation. Simple to understand. Right? Now, again, this is that verse wherein the Lord says that, I remember Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna tanyaham veda sarvani. Tanyaham veda sarvani. I know everything. Natvam vetha paranta. But you do not remember anything. So does it mean that Arjun has actually forgotten everything? No, Arjun has temporarily forgotten. But it is because of the Lord's will, and so that Arjun is able to perform his duty properly as expected in this particular role. Arjun needs to forget his previous life. If Arjun were to remember that he is Nar of the Nar Narayan, okay, what will he first do? He will pay obeisances to Narayan, that is Krishna himself, and he will say that I am not interested in anything about this kingdom and all that. I just want to serve you. I want to go and do meditation. The Lord wanted to achieve the objective of fighting and killing these miscreant kings via the medium of Arjun. Then that would become an impediment over there. So it was necessary for the Lord to make him forget about who he was and just ensure that he performs his role at the level of a friend with him. If Arjun knew that he is Narayan before even making the Lord become a Sarthi for Arjun, And you know, right, when the Sarthi requires some directions from the king or the person in the chariot, the king kicks the person or the charioteer at different sides depending on which direction he has to give. Imagine Arjun kicking Krishna. So if he were not to be made forgetful about what his past was, he wouldn't be able to perform his role. So it is as the need of the hour, for the role play, it is necessary for the Lord to make them forget. Now, see another point, the power and energy, Krishna will not keep that with us in an unlimited manner and for indefinite period of time. So whatever was required for Arjun in for the fulfillment of the mission, when the mission was fulfilled, all these powers were withdrawn from Arjun. So because these powers were no longer required. And yeah, another point, and they were not meant for going back to Godhead, meaning these powers are not necessary. So one should not think that only when I have this power will I be able to see Krishna or will I be able to go back to him. No, these powers are not necessary. You can go to Krishna even when you are a normal person also. Amazing, just amazing purport. So we should actually be thankful to whatever we have received from the Lord. And when something is being taken away also from our life, we should again be thankful for that, because we know, or we should know, that the Lord very well knows what should remain in our life and what should not remain in our life. When that thing should come in our life and when that thing should go away from our life. The Lord very well understands what to give, what not to give. So whatever we have as a mercy of the Lord, we should be thankful to him, and we should not lament about not having anything, or we should not even rejoice about having something. When we rejoice about something, there is a good chance that we will lament about not having something. So even that is also not required. Shitoshna sukha dukkheshu samasanga vivargyata. You need to be equipoised in happiness as well as distress. Hare Krishna. Any question? Shall I move on? No question? Okay. Yasya kshana viyogena loko yah priyadarshanaha ukthena rahito yesha mrutakah prochyate yatha. Translation.
I have just lost him, whose separation for a moment would render all the universes unfavorable and void, like bodies without life. Factually, for a living being, there is no one dearer than the Lord. The Lord expands himself by innumerable parts and parcels, as Swanch and Vibhinansh. Paramatma is the Swanch part of the Lord, whereas the Vibhinansh parts are the living being. Vibhinansh, as the living being is the important factor in the material body, for without the living being, the material body has no value. Similarly, without Paramatma, the living being has no status quo. Similarly, Brahman or Paramatma has no locus standi without the Supreme Lord Krishna. This is thoroughly explained in Bhagavad Gita. They are all interlinked with one another or in interdependent factors. Thus, in the ultimate issue, the Lord is the summum bonum and therefore the vital principle of everything. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Do you remember which verse is it which links Paramatma and the Lord? Anybody in Bhagavad Gita? No. So verse number 26 and 27 of 14th chapter, they talk about this one. So one who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Now, what is Brahman? Okay. I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, eternal, and the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. And why does he speak about this? Because in the third verse, he mentions this. The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth. And it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings. So this is basically the relationship. So Brahman cannot exist without the Supreme Lord. Anything and everything that the Brahman also does or gets done is possible because of the Lord. Yeah. So meaning giving birth to living beings is also possible only when the Lord impregnates it. And this Brahman is the foundation. Pratishtaham, he uses the word over there. The foundation of this Brahman is the Lord himself. So when people says that God has no form, God is just light, okay, they are actually referring to the Brahman. But Krishna very well clearly mentions that the Brahman cannot exist without me. The Brahman can exist in whatever form it is, light or whatever form it is. It is only possible because I support the Brahman. I am the foundation of Brahman. Now, we talked about this Swamsha and Vibhinnamsha, right? Krishna Swarup Prabhu gave a detailed explanation about this one. So I'll not go deeper into it again. But Swa and Amsha. Swa meaning self. Amsha is portion, a small part. So Swa Amsha meaning Krishna's own small part. That is the Paramatma, which is Vishnu. And we know Kshirodakshay Vishnu, then Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and Karanodakshay Vishnu. That is Mahavishnu. They are the three Vishnus, and we talked about the Chatur Vyuha also, right? Of Sankarshan, Balram, Aniruddha, Vasudev, and Pradyumna, not Balram. Sankarshan, Aniruddha, Vasudev, Pradyumna. So there are two of them. So all this basically Narayan all put together, that is becomes the Godhead. So when you hear this word continuously, Supreme Personality of Godhead, this is a intelligent phrase formed by Prabhupada. So Godhead is anything and everything that comprises Krishna, Narayan, Vishnu, Vasudev, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and various Vishnus, all put together, that is Godhead. Now these Godheads are different, or the gods within the Godhead are different from Brahman. So Brahman is impersonal, God in the Godhead is personal. That's why personality of Godhead. Okay, and within that, Krishna is the supreme. That's why Supreme Personality of God. That is the differentiation. So we need to understand, if at all you focus on the creation aspect and that Goloka chart, if you understand, many of your fundamentals will get cleared of these small things. Why Supreme Personality of God? Even that will get cleared properly. Hare Krishna. So we'll go to the next verse. Yet Samshaya.
Swansh, then what about Vinansh?
Vibhinnamsha is we. If you remember in 7.5 also he says, right? Aparayam itastvanyam prakrutim vidhi me param. There is a superior living entities, superior energy. That is Vibhinna, meaning many different and different from Krishna. So people have a thought process that at moksha we merge into the body of the Lord, or we merge into the Lord, or we merge into Brahman. But that's not the case. The individual identity remains constantly with us. That's why we remain Vibhinna. We remain Vibhinna, meaning Bhinna in a Vishesh manner. Bhinna is separate. Vishesh is a kind of a spatial separation. So we are part and parcel of the Lord, but we are not the Lord. And the Lord is not living entity. And we are separate as well from the Lord. So it is a spatial separation. Is that clear? Or shall I explain further? Okay, fine. So text verse number 7. Yad samshrayad drupada geham upagatanam rajnyam swayamvara mukhe smarad urmadanam smaradurmadanam tejo hutam khalu maya bhihatascha matsyah Sajjikrutena dhanushadhigata cha Krishna. Translation. Sunita Mataji, you want to read?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Wear my glasses over it.
Okay.
Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Only by his merciful strength was I able to vanquish all the lusty princes assembled at the palace of King Draupada for the selection of the bridegroom. With my bow and arrow, I could pierce the fish target and thereby gain the hand of Draupadi. Should I read the purport?
Yes, please.
Draupadi was the most beautiful daughter of King Draupada, and when she was a young girl, almost all the princes desired her hand. But Draupada Maharaja decided to hand over his daughter to Arjuna only, and therefore contrived a peculiar way. There was a fish hanging on the inner roof of the house under the protection of a wheel. The condition was that out of the princely order, one must be able to pierce the fish's eyes through the wheel of protection, and no one would be allowed to look up at the target. On the ground, there was a water pot in which the target and wheel were reflected, and one had to fix his aim towards the target by looking at the trembling water in the pot. Maharaja Drupada well knew that only Arjuna or alternatively Karna could successfully carry out the plan. But still he wanted to hand his daughter to Arjuna. And in the assembly of the princely order, when Drishtashtyumna, the brother of Draupada, introduced all the princes to his grown-up sister, Karna was also present in the game. But Draupadi tactfully avoided Karna as a rival of Arjuna, and she expressed her desires through her brother Drishtadhyumna that she was unable to accept anyone who is less than a Kshatriya. The Vaishyas and the Shudras are less important than the Kshatriyas. Karna was known as the son of a carpenter, a Shudra. So Draupadi avoided Karna by his plea. When Arjuna, in the dress of a poor Brahmana, pierced the difficult target, everyone was astonished. And all of them, especially Karna, offered a stiff fight to Arjuna. But as usual, by the grace of Lord Krishna, he was able to emerge very successful in the princely fight and thus gain the valuable hand of Krishna or Draupadi. Arjuna was lamentingly remembering the incident in the absence of the Lord, by whose strength only he was so powerful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So now we hear the complete story here. We don't need to go into the details of it. But the point that needs to be understood is everything was organized by the Lord. So had Draupadi not insulted Karna here, and had Duryodhan not felt insulted in this particular manner, he wouldn't have actually insulted her in that assembly where the dice game was being played. So this was one of the foundations of hurting Duryodhana's ego. Now look at it. If Drupad wanted to marry Draupadi to Arjun, he could have actually, meaning if Krishna wanted that to happen, forget Drupad, but if Krishna wanted that to happen, he could have made him take Draupadi away and run away also with him the way he did with Subhadra. It could have been simply done that way. But why was this assembly created? In fact, Pandavas and Kunti Mata were burnt in the Lakshagruha incident was well known to everybody. So how did Drupad feel that despite being burnt in that Lakshagruha, how can the Pandavas come, how can Arjun come and take the hand of Draupadi? Obviously, right? Nobody will think of a dead man coming alive and taking the hand of Draupadi. So when he did that, okay, he was guided by Lord Krishna from within to ensure that such a thing is set up and Arjun will still come in which wherever it is, even if he is not, whatever it is, but he will come and he will take the hand of Draupadi. And so that Duryodhan feels insulted, so that Karna feels insulted, so that the desire to have Draupadi even increases even more. And because you cannot have Draupadi because she is already married, then let me do something to her by which she will feel insulted throughout her life. These kind of thoughts definitely must have come to Karna's mind or Duryodhana's mind, because of which the disrobing of Draupadi was attempted in the assembly. Now, Krishna had organized all of this so well, so that the subsequent instances or incidents happen after the attempt to disrobe Draupadi, so that results in a war, and which can act as one of the methods or one of the reasons for which Krishna will destroy the Kaurav and the other kings. So all of this was supposed to be achieved, and the reasons were to be created. And in order to get that achieved, Arjun should be given extraordinary powers. That's why these powers were given to him. Work was completed. When work was completed, the powers were taken back. That is the complete arrangement of the Lord. In the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is one Leela mentioned there, Mausala Leela. I'm not sure if you know, but you must have heard, right, that the whole Vrishni dynasty was destroyed, right? And all the Yadavas, they fight among each other, they kill each other, and the Vrishni dynasty was ended. Did you hear this before? Anybody knows about this?
Prabhu, it is already also there in second or third chapter, third canto also. Slightly mention how this dynasty has gone away. All the people, all the Yadus, they were drunk, and all those.
But that's in a
fought
very,
amongst them.
at a very summary level, it is mentioned.
Yeah.
In complete detail, it is mentioned as to who did this, why did this happen, why did the Lord allow this, what was the Lord thinking before this to happen. All this is mentioned in the 11th canto. So the one of the reasons he wanted to do this was the Leela of Lord Krishna was like almost over now. The war was over, and Yudhishthir was ruling properly, and Uddhav Gita was also, meaning, on the verge of, Krishna was on the verge of speaking and all that. But then what had happened was the Yadavas, the Krishna's dynasty, that had become a very big number. And you know how all that has happened? So Krishna married 16,108 wives. In every wife, Krishna got 10 children plus one daughter. Okay, and all of these children, they also had 10 children. So the number went up to millions. And all of them were heavily powerful. Now Krishna was thinking that if he departs and leaves these people behind, there is a good chance that they may start doing something which is not supposed to be done. So he said, okay, they need to come back with me. So that's why he created an incident by which a sage, a Brahman, they cursed that person. That Mausala Lila is there. Mausala is basically a iron mace. Okay, so Samba, who is the son of Satyabhama, I think. Yeah, I think Satyabhama. So Samba dressed up like a girl, and he kept that mace. Samba, right? Samba is the son of Jambavati. Yeah, thank you. So he kept that mausala, that mace, on his stomach and covered it up with a sari. And then they went to a group of sages and they made some fun of those sages and asked them, this my wife is pregnant. Okay, what do you think? Will she get a son or a girl, daughter or a son? So the sage could easily understand that they were playing a trick and he is not a girl and he is actually carrying something else on his stomach. So the sage cursed him, stating that whatever you are having, this will become the cause of the destruction of whole of your dynasty. And then they become shocked. Then they go to Ugrasen and they tell him so and so thing has happened. Then Ugrasen was very much worried and none of them had the guts to tell this to Krishna. So nobody tells this to Krishna. And what they do is Ugrasen orders that mace should be crushed to powder and throw that powder in the ocean or the river. But what happens is, although they crush everything, the last portion of that, okay, remains uncrushed and they throw it as it is, which is taken up, meaning which is eaten by a fish, and then the fish comes, is trapped by one fisherman, and then they cut it, and then based on that they make some liquor out of it, and meaning this particular portion of that mess makes it more intoxicating. Then they drink that liquor, and out of the lack of consciousness because of that liquor, they fight among themselves, they kill each other, and that is how the dynasty gets destroyed. Now Krishna had already planned all of this, that this should happen, because of which the actual events could actually happen. So the point is, whenever these incidents are supposed to happen, Krishna wants it. And even with respect to his own associates, taking them back to Godhead, Krishna does such kind of arrangements so that, a lesson is also taught to the society about respecting sages, brahmanas, and the devotees of the Lord, and not, making tricks on them and making fun of them and disrespecting them in any other manner. That lesson is also taught. Another lesson is taught is, even if you are the sons of Krishna or the relatives of Krishna, Krishna will not tolerate the disrespectful behavior towards the sages and the devotees, even if you are the relative of Krishna. So the lesson is also taught to the society, and he is able to perform his lila also and takes these associates back to Godhead with him. Hare Krishna. So let's look at verse number 8. Yat sannidhavaham u khandavam agnaye adam min indram cha samara ganam tarasa vijitya labdha sabha maya krut adbhuta shilpa maya digbhyo aharandrupatayo balimadhvarete. Translation. I think this is a big purpose. Okay, not much. Okay. Who's reading?
Hare Krishna.
Hare.
Translation. Because he was near me, it was possible for me to conquer with great dexterity the powerful king of heaven, Indradeva, along with his demigod associates, and thus enable the fire god to devastate the Khandava forest. And only by his grace was a demon named Maya saved from the blazing Khandava forest. And thus we could build our assembly house of wonderful architectural workmanship, where all the princes assembled during the performance of Rajasuya Yajna and paid you tributes. Purport. The demon Maya Danava was an inhabitant of the forest Khandava, and when the Khandava forest was set on fire, he asked protection from Arjuna. Arjuna saved his life, And as a result of this, the demand felt obliged. He reciprocated by building a wonderful assembly house for Pandavas, which attracted the extraordinary attention of all state princes. They felt the supernatural power of the Pandavas, and thus, without grudge, all of them submitted and paid tributes to the emperor. The demons possess wonderful and supernatural powers to create material wonders, but they are always disturbing elements of the society. The modern demons are the harmful material scientists who create some material wonders for disturbance in the society. For example, the creation of nuclear weapons has caused some panic in human society. Maya was also a materialist like that, and he knew the art of creating such wonderful things. And yet, Lord Krishna wanted to kill him. When he was chased both by the fire and by the wheel of Lord Krishna, he took shelter of such a devotee as Arjuna, who saved him from the wrath of the fire of Lord Sri Krishna. Devotees are therefore more merciful than the Lord, and in devotional service, by mercy of a devotee is more valuable than the mercy of the Lord. Both the fire and the Lord ceased from chasing the demon as soon as both of them saw that the demon was given shelter by such a devotee as Arjuna. This demon, feeling obliged to Arjuna, wanted to do him some service to show his gratefulness, but Arjuna declined to accept anything from him in exchange. Lord Sri Krishna, however, being pleased with Maya for his taking shelter for a devotee, asked him to render service unto King Yudhishthira by building a wonderful assembly house. The process that by the grace of the devotee, the mercy of the Lord is obtained, and by the mercy of the Lord, a chance to serve the Lord's devotee is obtained. The club of Bhimasena was also a gift of Maya Dhanava.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri.
So just 2 points we will look at. Time is also not sufficient, but there is this story why this whole thing happened, So when the division of the kingdom was decided, Dhritarashtra, in his regular style, he being so attached to his son, and for that he was never bothered about doing injustice to Pandavas. He gave Khandav forest, which was a place which was completely a kind of a barren land, and it did not have sufficient minerals in the soil to grow something as well. When this came to him, Yudhishthir realized that he has been cheated, but taking this as a mercy of the Lord, he continued, and he asked for the Lord as a Krishna what to do. So Krishna said that this is your main place now. You have to perform your karma here. So once this was done, one day, Krishna and Arjun set out on their chariot to look around the complete place, the Khandav forest. And when they reached at one particular place, they could see one Brahman coming towards them. This Brahman told him that he wants some medicine which is there in the Khandav forest. Okay, but this particular forest is there is one there is some animals within that, and some of these animals are kind of friend of Indra. So he's saying that if I try and go there inside, okay, Indradev doesn't allow me to go in, and because of which I'm not able to get the medicines. So then Arjun realized that he is not some ordinary Brahman, and he told him, you please reveal your identity. Then he says, I am Agni Dev. Okay, so the fire of the god of fire. He's saying, I am Agni Dev. I have come here because one of my devotees, a big king, has offered so much ghee in the fire sacrifice that it has caused indigestion to me. So then he says that, the medicine, one of the sages recommended that it is available in this Khandav forest. That medicine I want to eat. But every time I enter, the forest gets burnt, because of which the animals inside, along with the friends of Indra, they pray to Lord Indra, and he showers lot of rain on this forest, because of which the fire gets extinguished. and I am not able to eat that medicine, because of which I am not able to cure my indigestion. So please help me with this. So Arjun says, fine, I can do that. But for this, I need two things. I need a chariot which will be able to cross this forest and everything. And I need a, a, a bow which is capable of fighting such kind of animals and demons. Okay. And I want a proper, what do you call, I don't know, where the place where arrows are kept, I want that to be an inexhaustible quiver it is called. So Agni Dev tells Varun Dev, and Varun Dev gives him the chariot, and Agni Dev gives him the bow and the arrows. And then Arjun, what he does is he fires arrows in such a manner that it creates a shelter which even water cannot percolate downwards, water cannot pierce it. And then after creating that shelter, then Agnidev goes inside, he burns the forest and he eats that medicine, and his indigestion is cured. But while doing that, there is this demon Mayadanav, who is the friend of Indra, who is residing in that forest. He runs outside the forest asking for shelter, and that is when he sees Lord Krishna and Arjun, and then the whatever has been mentioned here happens over there. So after the protecting of Mayadana's life, then Lord Krishna tells him to construct that palace, the assembly house, which is such a beautiful assembly house that is the place where Duryodhan, while walking, fell down. And in some versions of Mahabharata, incorrectly it has been mentioned that Draupadi laughed at him. Actually, Draupadi did not laugh at him. Draupadi only saw him falling down. But he himself felt so insulted in front of Draupadi falling down that he wanted to take revenge of that insult. And then the further dice game and the other things have happened. Okay. The other point that comes out from this verse is the demons are basically, the Sanskrit word is asura. Okay. Asura meaning, is negation, sura is pious. Okay. Those people who are not pious, who do not believe in the existence of the Lord, and who go against the wish of the Lord, they are called as asura. So in Bhagavad Gita, a complete chapter number 16, has been spoken by the Lord, specifically detailing the qualities of these asuras. Okay. Now these asuras are the one who actually go against the wish of the Lord, and the Lord also generates destruction via these people. Okay, so they are instrumental in ensuring that the Lord's plan is fulfilled, and wherever destruction is necessary, the Lord engages such asuras there. And that is why Prabhupada mentions here the modern demons. Okay, so whenever we want some destruction to happen, okay, whether it is a natural way of destruction, somebody will get an idea by which plastic will get created. That plastic in some or the other manner will cause some way or some other destruction. Okay, the silicon is another word. So internet and all these things which are not good for spiritual life, they get created because the Lord plants these ideas in these modern scientists, modern demons, so that the degradation and destruction of spiritual life gradually will happen. And nuclear weapons and all that, people have been able to build that, and people have been many countries have been have an arsenal of nuclear weapons, right? So sometime or the other, this will get used up, and the Lord will utilize these events, these incidents, to cause destruction of the earth. Hare Krishna. So quickly we'll look at verse number 9, which is the last verse for today. Any question around this? Today you seem to be silent. All okay? Everybody there? Shall I say good morning?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hello.
Okay.
Everything is fine, Prabhuji. Just
Okay.
no question.
Last verse, let's read it. Yat tejasa nrupa shiro anghrim ahan makhartham ayur nujastava gajayuta sattvaviryah tena hruta pramathanath makhaya bhupa yanmochitas tadanayan balim advarete. Translation. Who's reading?
I'm driving, yeah, so I can't read. Sorry.
Okay.
I will read.
Yeah. Okay.
Your respectable younger brother, who possesses the strength of 10,000 elephants, killed by his grace Jarasandh, whose feet was worshipped by many kings. These kings had been brought for sacrifice in Jarasandh's Mahabhairav Yagna, but they were thus released. Later they paid tribute to your majesty. Jarasandh was a very powerful king of Magadha, and the history of his birth and activities is also very interesting. His father, King Bhadrath, was also a very prosperous and powerful king of Magadha, but he had no son, although he married two daughters of the king of Kasi. Being disappointed in not getting a son from either of the two queens, the king, along with his wives, left home to live in the forest for austerities. But in the forest, he was benedicted by one great rishi to have a son, and he gave him one mango to be eaten by the queens. The queens did so and were very soon pregnant. The king was very happy to see the queens bearing children. But when the ripe time approached, the queens delivered one child in two parts, one with each of the queen's wombs. The two parts were thrown in the forest where a great she demon used to live, and she was glad to have some delicate flesh and blood from the newly born child. Out of the curiosity, she joined the two parts, and the child became complete and regained life. The she demon was known as Jara, and being compassionate on the childless king, she went to the king and presented him with a nice child. The king was very pleased with the she demon and wanted to reward her according to her desire. The she demon expressed her desire that the child be named after her, and thus the child was surnamed Jarasan, or one who was joined by Jara and she demon. In fact, the Jarasan was born as one of the parts and parcels of the demon Viprachati, the saint by whose benedictions the queens bore the child was called Chandra Kaushik, who foretold of the child before his father Vajra. Since Jarasan possessed demonic qualities from birth, naturally he became a great devotee of Lord Shiva, the lord of all ghostly and demonic men. Ravana was a great devotee of Shiva, and so also Jarasan. He used to sacrifice all his kings before Lord Mahabhairav Shiva, and by his military power he defeated many small kings and arrested them to butcher from Mahabhairav. There are many devotees of Lord Mahabhairav or Kal Bhairav in the province of Bihar, formerly called Magadha. Jarasan was a relative of Kamsa, the maternal uncle of Krishna, and therefore, after Kamsa's death, King Jarasan became a great enemy of Krishna, and there were many fights between Jarasan and Krishna. Lord Krishna wanted to kill him, but he also wanted that those who served as military men for Jarasan might not be killed. Therefore, a plan was adopted to kill him. Krishna, Bhima, and Arjun together went to Jarasandh in the dress of a poor Brahmin and begged charity from King Jarasandh. Jarasandh never refused charity to any Brahmin, and he performed many sacrifices also. Yet he was not on a par with devotional service. Lord Krishna, Bhim, and Arjun asked Jarasandh for the facility of fighting him, and it was settled that Jarasandh would fight with Bhima only. So all of them were both guests and combatants of Jarasandh, and Bhima and Jarasandh fought every day for several days. Bhima became disappointed, but Krishna gave him hints about Jarasandha's being joined together as an infant, and thus Bhima dissected him again and so killed him. All the kings who were detained in the concentration camp to be killed before Mahabhairav were thus released by Bhima. Feeling thus applies to the Pandavas, they paid tribute to King Yudhishthira. Hare Krishna.
Okay. So this is a story which Prabhupada has so nicely in detail has mentioned here. There's nothing much to add here. Those kings which were freed by Bhima, Lord Krishna, Arjun, all three of them. One of the most famous verses of Bhagavatam is spoken by them. So you might have heard Krishnaya Vasudevaya Haraye Paramatmane Pranat Klesha Nashaya Govindaya Namo Namah. So this verse has been spoken by those kings in the praise of Lord Krishna, because it was finally Krishna who helped them be released from the clutches of Jarasandha. So with this, we can end today's lecture. Any question around anything that we have covered? Nothing?
प्रभु द्रौपदी को कृष्णा भी बोलते हैं ना?
Sorry?
द्रौपदी, the wife of Arjun, उसको कृष्णा भी बोलते हैं.
Yeah, but there are two different pronunciations for this. One is Krishna, not A. So Krishna is the Lord Krishna. And Arjun as well as Draupadi, they had the name of Krishna. A was there in them.
That
So
becomes clear in Hindi book.
हाँ, but English में क्या होता है ना? English में the pronunciation in, if it is Vedabase kind of websites, they use the accentuated characters. अभी यहाँ पे देखो चंद्र कौशिक है, वो कौशिक नहीं है, कौशिक है, sh, and sh is pronounced based on the line above the alphabet S. इधर शिवा लिखा है ना, इधर देखो इधर करके, तो जरासंध, तो it is not Jarasandh, it is Jarasandha. तो वैसे ही कृष्णा के टाइम पे you will not see the line above alphabet A. It is Krishna. In Hindi, the Devanagari script or Marathi, meaning that script, they have a line especially after na, which indicates it is A, not A. Yeah. But English में क्या होता है? People not always use the accentuated character. So Krishna becomes Krishna. तो आप जब हरे कृष्णा महामंत्र का चैंटिंग करते, वी डोंट से हरे कृष्णा, इट इज हरे कृष्ण, कृष्ण or Krishna, whichever way you pronounce, but it should be ending with a and not a. So both names are different. Krishna and Krishna are different.
Prabhuji, the shs should be like, you should roll your tongue back, right? Sh, like that.
बात ये बोलता है, पता नहीं मुझे डिटेल में, but sh is what we say. Sh, rolling the tongue back, पता नहीं, मैंने किया नहीं है. Sh. I'm sorry.
No, because the dot under the S is where you roll your tongue, and the slant line above the S is the sh. Just, I mean, that's what.
Okay. From Uday, every time I always had this confusion. In Devanagari script, there are two sh. Okay. एक श होता है जो ऐसा प करके लिखते हैं और उसमें एक लाइन होती है, एंड दूसरा श होता है, इट विल बी लाइक हाँ, ये एक श है, शी करके लिखा है अभी, बट दैट इज अ श. एक वो श होता है और एक दूसरा एक श है जो यहाँ पे अभी ये वर्ष में दिख नहीं रहा है, but both need to be pronounced differently. I personally don't know what is the difference in the pronunciation. Maybe I need to ask somebody how to exactly speak that. Okay, so thank you all for joining. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.